Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is the title story, and it is titled "Neighbor used a bulldozer to displace and destroy my property, $300,000 worth of damages across the neighborhood." I lived in my house in my quiet little cul-de-sac for almost 8 years, and I really wanted to add a second bathroom of my master bedroom. My wife was having health issues that made it hard for her to walk to the original bathroom in the house, plus this was a great time for me to design a shower that would work for her condition. My neighbor, his name was Greg, had recently passed away in an accident, and his son Keith took over his house and other effects. At first, Keith seemed like a nice guy, maybe lacking a little in the personability department, but he was young, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s. He also liked to party and always seemed to have a lot going on over there, different cars in and out and all kinds of people. I tried to mind my own business and not think too much of it until he started leaving trash on our property line. Granted, these lines were pretty close and shared a privacy fence where Greg and I had always kept our trash cans. Keith, on the other hand, just uses all the trash cans instead of only his own and stacks them up high and makes it impossible for me to use them. Plus, the garbage was spilling out everywhere and animals were coming and making more of a mess of things. One day I came outside to throw away some things and ran into Keith. I had met him several times prior, even before Greg passed away. I attempted to discuss the trash can situation with him, but he honestly didn't appear to be sober. His demeanor was strange and he was swaying slightly and his pupils were dilated. He did at least acknowledge me and said that he would try to remember next time, and walked back into his house, which had been incredibly unkept and filthy since he moved into it. Not that Greg was super clean, but he at least would make it look presentable and kept his front flower beds looking nice. A month or so passed and Keith continued to use our trash cans still, and had even taken to letting his friend park in between both of our driveways. This became a problem one day when I had my contractor and his workers over at the house to prepare the process of building the new bathroom. A cement truck was there to lay the concrete foundation for our add-on, but they couldn't get far enough into our driveway because one of Keith's friends was parked halfway in our driveway that day. I went over to his house and knocked on the door, to which a very rough-looking woman in old baggy clothes answered. The house reeked, and from what I could see past her, was full of trash and God knows what else. Keith came to the door after a moment of the girl yelling for him. He looked like he had just been woken up from some kind of hibernation, eyes bloodshot, just an old pair of basketball shorts, and hair sticking out every which way. I mean, he honestly looked like something out of a cartoon. Keith's patience was thin that morning as he looked outside at my team of workers waiting on him. He then groaned and said that he would have his friend move her car, but he was going to have to look into something. I was not sure what he meant by that, and I did not bother to think much more about it. The woman moved her car and I carried on with my day and plans. It was the end of the week when the contractor was framing everything and progress was moving along smoothly, and I then got an aggressive knock at the door. It was Keith. He looked a little pissed, which he always did to me anyway, but this time it was different. "We need to talk about whatever it is you are doing over here." He waved his hand towards the construction going on. "What about it?" I was confused about what there was for us to talk about, and then I remembered his offhand comment the other day. "Is there something wrong?" Keith scoffs at me like I am some kind of fool. "Yeah, you're building onto my property." I couldn't help but laugh, which clearly pissed him off even more. The property line ends about a foot on the other side of the privacy fence. When I built the fence, I actually gave your dad that extra room on his side. He does not like this answer and says that I am lying, and his father always told him the opposite. I knew Greg for years and highly doubted that he would have told him that. Keith is most likely remembering it wrong. I explained that this is the truth of it and that if he does not like it, he can pay for a land surveyor to come out and tell him otherwise. My contractor and I had already done all of this to ensure that we were staying within the property. Unfortunately, Keith is not the sharpest tool in the shed, nor can he take any kind of criticism, so this is a big deal to him. Keith started breathing heavily from his nose, probably the first time for him, his face flushing. I could smell the liquor on him from the night before. "You will see, old man," was all he said, and he stormed off, which was a little unnerving. I don't trust this guy and he seems unhinged most of the time to begin with. Another week passes and I don't see or hear much from Keith, thank God. My contractor did mention though that he had come out and talked with him the other day. He was stating something about how I had lied about the property line and he wanted to know how he could sue me. I don't know what he was expecting to accomplish talking with my contractor about this, but he did not get very far with the conversation. I guess I should mention one very important part of this story. Greg was a guy who owned a construction company. He had a large garage in the very back of his yard that had a few smaller bulldozers and backhoes. I was surprised to find out that Keith had not sold them yet, and surely they would sell for a lot of money. Anyway, Keith approached me with an attitude of aggression. Again, not long after he spoke with my contractor, he stormed up while I was bringing in groceries and said that he had a bone to pick with me. I was respectful and asked him what the problem was. He then said that he found the deed and it told him that I couldn't build past a certain point, which I was supposedly violating. I told him that I wanted to see whatever paper he had that said this, as I wanted to be a good neighbor. He then said that he didn't have it, which told me that he was lying. I knew he was already, but I wanted to be sure. I then proceeded to tell him that if he had any issues that he would need to go through the steps of proving it in court. I was tired and sick of his BS at this point and just wanted him to leave me alone. This statement about the word court caused him to fly off the handle. He started using every curse word imaginable and even picked up a few rocks and other objects and threw them in various places in a state of rage. He made threats towards me, my wife and house and said that I would regret ever talking to him. I was not afraid, but I took my groceries inside to avoid witnessing his fit any further. The next morning, very early in the morning, I woke up to a strange sound. It was as if there was heavy machinery right outside my bedroom. And then a world-shaking crash that about gave me and my wife a heart attack breaks through where the bathroom is being built and plastic is the only thing that is separating us. All I see is the early morning light shining through and a giant yellow bulldozer ripping the entire new bathroom from the inside of our house. The sound of the machinery and the crash was deafening and seemed like a dream, or like a nightmare. After a moment of shock, I quickly called 911 and I run outside in my underwear, not even caring about who sees me, and that is when I confirm my suspicions. It was Keith in the bulldozer, decimating the poor half-finished master bathroom for my lovely wife, spreading it all over my yard. He also took out the privacy fence and smashed all the trash cans, even crushing part of the second car I had in my driveway. It took the cops showing up before he stopped driving the bulldozer over both of our properties, even damaging the neighbor's boat on the other side of him. He basically went on a rampage and demolished half his back porch, my new bathroom, car, fence and trash cans, plus his friend's car and neighbor's old pontoon. And guys, I guess a pontoon is some kind of old boat. Anyway, they had to threaten to shoot him before he would get out of the cab, where they tackled him as soon as he touched the ground. Needless to say, Keith was in a lot of trouble. He ended up selling the house to pay back all the money he owed in damages, which was pretty substantial as you can imagine. I think between what he did to all three properties, he owned almost $300,000 in damages. He did end up admitting, which I already knew, that he was on drugs and alcohol when he decided to go on his smashing spree. He also wrote me and my wife a letter of apology after he sobered up. And yeah, Ripe Stars, time and time again we can see in these stories what drugs can do to someone. Although then again I gotta say guys, if this guy would have been sober while doing all of this, I would have been probably even more concerned. Anyway, if you enjoy the stories about entitled crazy neighbors, then please feel free to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much for your amazing support, it is very much appreciated, and now let's dive right into the next story. The next one is titled Regular Pro Revenge. I had just graduated from college, did not do an internship, shame on me, and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was on Indeed.com, a job posting site, just throwing up my resume to see what stuck. I was not having much luck finding anything, but that was until I received a call from a security company. You know, the company that advertises itself as the largest security company in the world. Anyway, they brought me in for an interview which was actually disguised as a job offer. Experience now would have seen that as a red flag, but I was green and didn't know any better. For those that don't know, security works like this. Client, I need security. Security company, we can provide guards to you at X plus $25 and pay our guards X. Client, great. It's a horrible business model, but again, I was young and ignorant. In order to protect my anonymity, the client will hereafter be referred to as Center. Who Center was is irrelevant to this story. After several HR hiccups, more red flags, I finally made it to Center to start guarding their facility. I cannot emphasize how good of a job this could have been. I was paid well for the work I was providing, not like the security company, but still well. The job itself was a cake, my co-workers were awesome, more on that in a bit, and there was such a camaraderie among the other guards, well, all except one person. The site supervisor. We will call her Ursula because that is what the witch looked like. Unfortunately, because this happened so many years ago, I cannot provide as many juicy details for a good suspenseful build-up, but I will try my best to fill in as many things as I can. If you have any questions, comment below. I worked with the greatest group of men and women I will probably ever work with. I worked with former Marines, law enforcement, naval ship captains, high-ranking military, pretty much an elite group of boys and girls. I was clearly a boy in their world, but for some reason, they really liked me and motivated me to reach for more. The reality was that they had their careers in service and just wanted something to get them out of the house. Don't get me wrong, they were not old and decrepit, most of them were from the north and had already retired out and were receiving a good pension. They kept reiterating it to anyone who would talk to them. The thing was, Ursula was just like me in that she had a bad resume, had no experience, much less be qualified to supervise this elite group. Once she realized that is when the paranoia began to set in. She had a list and everyone that was on it, their workplace became a living hell. Not only did she chase you off, but if she caught wind of where you were going, she would actively call your next employer to drag your name through the mud. It was absolutely sick. Not only was she toxic as a boss, but she was woefully incompetent. Let me give you a summary of some of the things Ursula did. She constantly threatened termination, she openly admitted to targeting employees and minority employees especially, continuously revised the schedule throughout the week, causing multiple guards to arrive or sometimes posts uncovered. She wielded the schedule as a weapon to punish guards she didn't like and degraded our staffs as well as Center's staff on a routine basis. In addition, she intimidated guards requesting leave, falsified timesheets, illegally initiated traffic stops on Center employees, illegally detaining Center's employees, illegally searched Center's employee possessions, and disgusting amount of sexual harassment, as well as warning us guards to not speak with Center employees, and she was lying more than Congress and went through several mood swings a shift. So yeah, she was a real piece of work. Being located in a southern state, there was no union for us. The best we could do was keep firing emails up the chain of command. When I say we, I meant them. At the time, I did not have the confidence that I do now, and I lurked in the shadows. My thought process was, if these people who are way smarter than me are not able to affect change, what chance did I have? Ursula's actions I listed above were quite routine and were displayed on a daily basis. Slowly but surely, the great men and women I came to know and love would come to my shack and say, "OP, I just cannot do it anymore." It was so sad. I respected these people so much, but they were just cannon fodder in Ursula's insane war. When the new employees showed up to replace the ones that left, they would all say "deuces" as soon as they arrived. One night I was talking with one of Center's employees because F anything Ursula had to say, and they were laughing because a report had just come out about how my company had a turnover rate of 97.5%. Even though it could have been easy to figure out that I had never thought about it, and that left me shaken. By that point, all the original staff was gone and I was now a supervisor, not dissimilar to the Hitler Youth situation. That's honestly how it felt like. I knew I was a passenger on the Titanic. How we didn't lose that contract just blows my mind. Not only did my company hate her, but everyone in Center did as well. Simply because she made their lives a living hell by being Karen Blood, wannabe cop. I figured if we didn't lose the contract, I would end up on the crap list eventually and get chased out. However, for all the misery she caused people I respected and Center company, I was not about to go into the night quietly, and that is where the revenge begins. Remember that college degree I mentioned earlier? Yeah, it's in communications. It's a stupid degree that I don't recommend anyone getting unless you like barely above minimum wage, but what that degree entailed was lots of research, papers, interviewing, etc. I really did not know how good I was at it at the time until after this plan concluded and I used it several times later. Different stories for a different day. Now, I understand a lot of people might be judging the way I write this post. There is a huge difference though. Right now, I am chilling while I casually type this. The difference is I wrote a formal piece for a professional setting, not dissimilar to lawyer jargon. I knew what would happen if I went up the chain of command. There is no amount of technical allegations I could throw at the security company because they are siding with the very likely option that I would not dare to go beyond HR. I had already secured a new job in a different field, notice already in, so I had nothing to lose at this point. I interviewed all current staff, former staff I trusted, and gathered every single grievance they had against Ursula. I still have that list on my desktop and you read some of the highlights above. They had no idea what I was doing, except that OP has an idea. I don't recommend anyone doing what I did, but like I said, I was out the door and moving on to a different field, so I didn't give a damn anymore. I'm honestly not entirely sure of the ranking structure that the Center company had. There were so many chiefs and different departments within, I had to trust somebody though. One boss, who I will refer to as Bossman from now on, hated Ursula with a passion because her BS made his life hell. I had to test his loyalty though. One morning while Bossman and I were alone, I began a little light interrogation while feeding him intel about the guard's situation being under Ursula's thumb. He agreed that the turnover was unacceptable, but he wasn't high enough up the chain to affect any change, unless he had some sort of proof. I didn't go into details, but I informed him that I had a list and I would be happy to give it to him. He said absolutely. The problem was that Ursula was hella paranoid and would know if I showed up when I wasn't scheduled, and rightfully suspect mutiny was afoot. I told him I would meet him at 6 AM the next day. I went home that night and put the finishing touches on the list. There was one final thing I had to do. This was a guarded facility and I would have to get past the guard without raising suspicion or alert Ursula that I was there. When I got to the gate, I don't know what came over me. I lifted up the envelope my letter was in and I said, "Mark," obvious fake name, "I was never here." He just looked at me, nodded and let me through. Why? I will never know. I didn't ask. He had no idea about the list. He hated Ursula too, but he did a lot of talking, so I never shared it with him. I met Bossman, handed him the envelope, we shook hands, and that was that. I was already on the schedule to start my next job that overnight, so I went home to sleep. I never expected anything to come of this because nothing had happened after so many good faith attempts with proof. I just did it so I could walk away with a clean conscience. I went to work that night, turned off my phone, and when I came back to the car to have a smoke, I turned on my phone. My phone began flooding with text messages. I really don't have the full story of what happened. This is what I collected from my ex-coworkers. Apparently, Bossman with several of the other chiefs had forced my security company to have an on-site meeting, told them what a piece of work Ursula was and how much of a liability she was, and to remove her from the site permanently. I also heard she was wailing while she was being escorted to her car. Ah yes, salty tears. From what I heard, she was not fired but just rehomed in a site by herself, stripped of all her power. And yeah guys, maybe some of you would be a little bit disappointed that she was not fired or anything like that, but I think for people who are on such a power trip, being stripped of all their power is even worse than getting fired, and literally the best insult or the best thing, or for them the worst thing, you can do to them. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.